So I'm here to share my ideas on the elements of successful organizations. It's kind of what I feel has been my vocation and something that I'm very passionate about, whether it's with businesses or organizations of any sort. I think a lot of these concepts can apply to any group of people. But I believe the path to success in any organization is alignment. So this is a term you do hear a lot in the business world, but you also hear it a lot in law of attraction. So I like that term because it kind of brings together something that's more tangible with process and so forth with something that's more connecting in a more spiritual way, I guess, or less tangible. And really what we're trying to align are beliefs, purpose, and vision. And so those terms typically in the past have had a very obscure, we talk about mission statements in organizations and so forth, and everybody gets lost. I was on a committee for a church, and we spent 6 months trying to write their mission statement, and it was just kind of I think people don't really have a logical approach to it, and the word mission and all of that tends to have different meaning, and I'm hoping to give a little bit of clarity of how I feel those should be approached in creating them for an organization like this. So basically, with beliefs, create your purpose, and purpose is always your why. And I did send out an email about kind of tapping into the group to kind of get to see what they thought overall the purpose of this organization is. And I, along with that, sent a video link from a presentation by Simon Sinek. And his big belief is always start with why. And so really the purpose always comes down to why. And you'll see if you interact with me a lot, I try to bring everything back to why. Why are you doing that? Does it fit with the organization's overall purpose? And then from the purpose, then you can look at starting to paint a picture of what that would look like if that why is being executed at its fullest. So, where the purpose is why, your vision is then your what. And that's more tangible, and in an organization like this or any business, the more clear you have that vision, the more tangible it is, the more believable it is, the more people will be inspired to it. But typically you're starting with a world or a reality as it is, and you want to then progress it or move it to something that's greater or something that's different. And I always talk about the gap. There's a gap between what is and the way we want to see the world or our organization to be in the future. It's incredible how passionate people are about something that doesn't exist. Something in the future. I was talking to Neil earlier about there's a level of schizophrenia involved in that. A lot of entrepreneurs and revolutionaries typically aren't right because they're so passionate about something that's not real. But the gap is really about that mission that I was talking about. So the way I look at mission statements, the term mission I typically downplay. That's only a small part of what an organization should be thinking about. So you're going to execute something, you're going to act to do something, which is your mission, so that you have an impact. And that's the purpose. So what I would propose in any organization when you're looking at having a formal written, I call it a purpose statement more than I do a mission statement, because mission is just merely part of what's more important, because remember we're starting with why. So we start with what the impact is, so that what? And we have a reason and a rationale behind why we're doing what we do. I think in organizations your mission can change, but your purpose or your why should never change. if it's noble and if it was correct. It's interesting with Nick's presentation. Now I'm going to really try to incorporate into what I do with that. I mean, it's a noble cause is what we're trying to look for typically in here. The more noble the cause is, even I talk about this with businesses, because profit's not noble. It's nice, and I see it as more of a goal. And when I show you the next step in this, it's more about a result. But your why or your purpose, the more it can touch people with noble, and I'm liking the idea of incorporating into this, if you're bringing people to love, joy, and enlightenment, you're more likely to have them take action on it. So any questions on any of that?
Not for me, please continue.
What's that?
Not for me, please continue.
Awesome. So when I first started in with this group, me coming from my vocation is operations and management, there was this idea and there's this apprehensiveness about structure. That there was this, we don't want structure. And I would say, I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think you need to have an organization where you share those same beliefs, purpose, and vision. That's why we're all here. But in order for it to progress to a vision, we need to have some sort of structure. I'll even go as far as say the group will have structure, whether you like it or not. They're going to be unwritten and unsaid. There will be a structure. Whether it meets the needs of the group or not is what you need to determine. So at the top of, or the first part of it, is the vision. I've determined that there's 4 layers in successful organizations, at least 4. The first layer at the top is your vision. Like I said before, it's your what. A lot of people will start with imagine if, and then you can look at. Bill Gates said, imagine a desktop computer on everybody's desk. Apple was more about, they wanted to imagine a world where the small business or the small person could compete with the larger companies. That's why they created Apple. But basically with that vision, the more, like I said before, noble, you're ultimately trying to inspire someone to action. So we accept that, with a vision, having a what and having a clear vision isn't going to make it a reality. Something has to happen. Even in the law of attraction world, there's a recognition of your purpose isn't to meditate. Your purpose is to meditate, to find clarity, to take action, is the way I see it. But this inspiration is important in getting people to want to do something towards that vision. I like to use an analogy of a study that was done on northern pike fish, that they would put them in a situation or an area and have different food go by them at different distances. And there was a definite formula that they came up with the size and what that looked like for that northern to want to go after it. And I think we're wired the same way. I think that we see things come by us, but whether we're willing to actually take action on it or not is going to depend on how big it is, how bright it is, and how impactful. You might see a lot of things that you find interesting, but it's not inspiring you to take action. So I see things a lot of that way. I'm interested in a lot of things, but I'm not willing to take action on them. Honestly, that's where I'm at with this group right now. I find it interesting. I'm not certain of what action I'm really ready to take with this group right now, partly because I don't know if I share its beliefs, purpose, and vision yet. I don't know what those are in a clear way. I sort of do, but we all are functioning with intention, so we need to know if, like the northern, is it worth me going after it or not, and expending that energy. So when we see this vision, the next part that we need to do is to break it down, because the vision can be too much for some people. The visionaries who are in charge up here typically have that creative imagination to see the big picture and how it will be, but we need to break those down into goals. And the goals are more manageable chunks about making it believable and inspiring people to want to act on it. And then the actions need to come up to results or produce results of some sort. So we need, you can see we're kind of trying to connect the dots from where the action becomes the vision, and these results ultimately would contribute to the goals. So from the vision to the goals, we're breaking it down, and the actions, we're kind of building it up. But there are people within any organizations that are really good at these different aspects of it. Someone needs to create that vision and clarify it and remind everybody of it when you start getting into situations of drama or things aren't going well. Someone needs to continue to remind them of that. The goals, someone needs to calculate the path. So this is our either roadmap I like to use or your blueprint of the organization. This is typically a different skill set. These people aren't creative. They can't see that long-term vision. They're more short-term and they want to see, they're more logistical and tactical people. And then the results, someone needs to coordinate these actions into positive results or the desired results. Here's where I call it projects. So within this organization, a lot of what's done here are projects, and then the question becomes, are they ultimately fitting our goals? And then someone needs to execute these actions. A lot of people don't like this world of being creative. They just want to work. They want to get their hands dirty. They want to roll up their sleeves. They want to get things done. They don't really care to see the big picture. Although there is an aspect of this that's really important to kind of tie all this together is feedback. So I think at the top, those people who are really into the long-term vision, they want feedback to see, are the goals being met? And then there are people that want to see the feedback and be assured that the results are aligning with the goals. And then what's really important and what's lost in most organizations is feedback from the top back down to your actions. That's why reporting is important, or showing success at the top so that they can feel inspired that we're on the right path and things are going the right way. Like I said, work in progress. All right. Any questions on that? Thoughts?
It's great.
It's very interesting.
Thank you.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's what that's for sure.
So I look at the path of organizations and how they evolve. And I've seen a lot of businesses and organizations I've worked for that just follow this. It's uncanny when you recognize it and you see it, how it's followed. There's different variations on the lengths of these, but it's pretty obvious. So at the beginning of any organization, infancy, right? Some of the descriptions you would have there is it's exciting. It's fairly simple. And you have typically low volume, whether it's people involved or the product you're creating or what you're doing. It grows pretty quick, maybe not in revenue or whatever, but in what we're trying to do. So this is kind of that fun, exciting stage of a group or business getting started. Everybody's on board, their vision's there, they're really feeling it. And then the next part is adolescence. So this is where you start getting to where it's getting more complicated or complex. You have more volume. And this is where you start seeing stress creep in. Most businesses die here. But it's something that if you are aware of this, or you can predict that that's going to happen, there's ways of minimizing this or avoiding it. So there's a couple of things that come into play, and to me it's a matter of there's a point before you're going to be able to mature, is to find clarity. Clarity back to why. So we need to be reminded again, why are we here in this first place? We're all unhappy with each other. We're all, stressed out. And so there needs to be clarity about, here's why we're doing it. There needs to be clarity on the how. Because there's normally what happens in this is you haven't developed process or systems or logistically how you're going to manage what's happening. It was okay before when it was smaller, but then it had to, when you're growing, you have that. So one of two things are going to happen. You're going to figure that out, and then you'll thrive and mature, or you'll die. It's 100% my experience on this. It's never, sometimes the death will be more extended out. All right, I gotta wrap up. I got one more thing to show, and then how does that happen, that clarity? And how do you move beyond that? If you're interested, can I go longer?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
So I have a process that I call alignment. An organizational alignment. Step one in it is to document everything that's going on in the organization as it exists today. And that includes doing, I call it a task inventory. The second part of that is determine roles. The third part of it is develop the organizational structure. An org chart. The second part of it is creating a system for evaluation. I call analytics. And that includes creating scorecards, developing benchmarks, and evaluation of those benchmarks. And then the third part of this is then now creating a plan to evolve the organization through that adolescence into thriving and maturity. But I've done this different ways in different orders, where we start with a plan and we try to do, this is necessary for us to start where we stand, to know, if we're going to create a path, we need to know where we're at. What are our assets and what do we have going for us? So in that evolving the organization, we're going to look at setting goals. Oh, I forgot an important step there. The first step is going back to reaffirming our purpose and vision. And then step two is setting goals. Because through this process, we really know where we're at as an organization. We know what assets we have, we know what resources we can work with. We know our purpose. Now we can start, remember that slide where we had the vision, goals, results? So now we can set goals. And the third part of it is then creating an action plan. So an action plan will do not only the execution of what your vision is about, but how we are going to evolve the organization to improve it so it doesn't suffer a slow death and that it thrives. And that's all I have. Any questions, thoughts?
How do we establish our vision and our mission statement? What do you recommend?
So typically, I say that one person in the organization has to be the person who creates it with the help of the group. It can be with the help of the group. In a small business, it's the owner. So I work with the owner to have them determine what that is. But we get feedback from the entire staff about what they think it is. But we need to, this is one of those differences between a group like this and a business. I think the group has to either formally or informally pick someone to say, you're in charge of creating the vision, and if the person comes up with one and we don't all agree with it, then we pick somebody else. It can't be consensus. It'll never get done. But we can pick, the consensus should be who we pick to, typically it's that visionary person. So there is a challenge, I think, in this group of what that is.
I think Tyler is really good at putting words together. Yeah, Tank. He's really good at it, and he's an Aquarius. He is the visionary. Just funny enough, but anyways, he really would help us put that
Yeah,
together.
it doesn't need to be the visionary, but it's usually the visionary is going to, and I see this group can have several visionaries. You know, there is that creative element of it, as long as they're aligned, right? They all have the same beliefs, purpose, vision for it, which is really hard.
I'm curious, when you work with business owners, like say a small business, and he's overwhelmed with the business, but he wants to have the structure moving forward to do it right. I mean, what kind of cooperation do you get? I mean, I'm sure it varies from owner to owner, business to business.
The best thing they can do is hire me. As an outsider, it's then, business owners aren't good at that structure part of it. They're creative visionaries. They're not good with dealing with people typically. I mean, I define leadership, it is a people thing, but not in behavioral execution. It's more of a leader has a clear vision, they have a clear path on how they're going to get there, and they care for and love those who are supporting the vision. So, you know, there is that aspect of it. With small businesses, back to that, they're not good at it, and they need somebody who is, and that's typically, and I found it's weird that the staff or even the management team, they listen to me more than they will. I have a methodology and approach to it that's logical, and it's believable to get it done. So I think if you don't have that, they're like, this is a waste of time. I don't have time for this.
If you get off track, you can go back to your structure.
Correct.
And regroup.
So normally I do a 14 to 6 week program where I come into their office for a lunch with their entire staff. We educate them on the concepts, then they're left with an assignment. Their first assignment is for each of their departments, create that task inventory. The next week we come back and say, assign those tasks to the team members in your department. So now they have it's digestible. And then they start seeing they have this thing they've started building. This whole documentation gets done, and there's momentum going they put in maybe 2-3 hours a week overhead in it. This is where really things start to when you start putting numbers down and they start seeing graphs and data and so forth. Now it's tangible as hell. You can really see it.
It's a really interesting technology you present here. And the whole time I was thinking about how it applies to Ubuntu, not necessarily wandering off into small businesses or other, and I can see how it goes either way. Michael Tellinger has been presenting this information for 12 years now, and every time that something gets started somewhere, it's like a little microcosm of what he's, let's go make this vision come true. It's sort of like a group of people who have accepted that vision, find it to be solid and worthy, and let's try and make it come true. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen in the history of Ubuntu, how many times it's crashed and burned. It comes up to a level, starts getting some activity, and then And so that point of clarity, where you go back and revisit your purpose and your vision and your goals, that's like the place where we're at right now,
It's
in this group.
exactly
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not that we ever reached adolescence. I didn't mean to put it that way.
No,
'Cause
I think you're
we're
in the,
still in the,
I thought about this group, you're in the start of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're just rounding that corner to where all of a sudden, there's uncertainty. When I have conversations with people, there's kind of like, I don't know if we should be doing this or how we should do
Right,
that, and
right.
you know, uncertainty leads to drama, and I can always tell how well an organization's doing if there's any drama going on.
Right, right.
Talking to
No,
the
you're
people,
absolutely right.
people talking behind their backs and
Yeah.
pointing fingers, it's their fault, this isn't going right, and
Yeah.
that's
And
what
I can
leadership.
feel it. I internalize that, right? Because, you know, I mean, I have some responsibility and feel it that way. So this business of coming up with a vision statement or a mission statement, or however you want to say that.
Purpose statement is what I call it.
Purpose
Probably a
statement is
purpose
probably a little better.
Yep.
That's what they're-
I would say that really, and one of the guys, Timo, who used to come, and there's a lot of people who don't come anymore, okay? So that's a clue right there. Timo asked me one time, and it was very confronting. He said, is this one of those groups where we all get together and talk and feel good about stuff? Or is this one of those groups where we're gonna get stuff done?
But I thought about it where, again, for me, I'm uncertain. At the very least, I've called to action to come here once a month. I'm doing that. I feel
Yeah.
like that's the level of my clarity and my shared beliefs is, I like these ideas. I'm philosophical in nature, so I like to just chit chat about stuff. That's value to me. I may not wanna do anything else.
Right.
Depends on is the vision
We have to
and the
understand what
purpose
our
of this
goals are.
group to get together once a month to share ideas? It can be,
I think it's more than that,
Right.
though.
okay.
I'd like it to be more than that.
Do you imagine it to be something else?
Yes, I imagine it to be something else.
It's
There's all
definitely-
this stuff about, exactly what you went through.
Yeah,
It's exactly what you went through, and the difficulty here is that it's like, nobody's ever imagined or how to get to a place where the world that we want is coming true.
Right.
And there's not a path on how to get there. Are we running out of time?
Well, yeah, I'll finish with this though. You started talking about this step.
Yep.
I propose we start
At the
here.
beginning, yeah.
We need to do a task inventory. We need to
Right.
see what have people been willing to act on, because that's really what they believe, right?
Yep.
That's the proof, and I'd like to see what has already happened and how did it happen, and you know, I think right now Jason has some really good,
Yes.
for what he's doing to be able to start maybe with some of those things. How does this meeting run? Let's document that, because that's something that is an asset to us. How this gets done, and the fact that it gets done so well week after week is something it's a great asset. New members coming in can feel off of that. There's process here, there's success here, in how things are executed, other than going over on time.
Yeah, if you mind me, you know, Jason just went on for, you know.
So
great,
what I would,
But we can definitely talk.
well,
more
follow
about
up
that,
with
follow up
some of
on-
you in, you know, the specifics of how this can happen. I have some technology, I don't know if it would work with this, so I'm trying to rethink spreadsheets. You know, I think as a whole, one of the, you know, action items I have is looking at technology to organize. You know, just like any organization, that clarity comes back to where do I find information and how is this done? But I think if we had a shared library, typically out of this, we create a documentation library organized by, you know, how the organization is structured. So that's something. Google Docs is free, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking here when we are talking about organizations, and for me, you know, the world is changing so rapidly, and so we are gonna have to make adjustments all the time, and we will see that what we do is just part of a much larger purpose.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, people have come together with the greatest intention and beautiful vision, and they're to do this and this and this, and they put it in place, and then the issues come up.
Yeah,
So what is important for me that we do some, you know, we do meditations, you know, work on ourselves, because it's about us. If we can't hold these energies and these shifts, it's going to fall apart. So the personal, spiritual development is the most important. And as we do that journey and listen to
yeah.
what the
I mean,
bigger purpose
you can
is.
apply spirituality throughout this structure. I mean, that's kind of how I've found a way of reconciling working in the business world to being something more noble. I'm helping them to reduce their stress. The number one reason people leave an organization is their management, or their manager. The Aligned Operations, my company, we try to evolve their management teams so that they're better people and that they create an environment where the teams they work with are not stressful, they're functional, they're doing what they love, they're being appreciated for that. So that can all fit together. I think that spiritual element and the logical, practical side of organizations.
I like your noble, the way you used that word noble.
And noble is, I'm finding it's not something, you don't describe it, you feel it, and it comes back to the limbic brain. You know, we can't describe those things because the brain doesn't know how to put words to it, but you can feel it.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say the management group, whoever you're working with, is meeting, and they're like, oh, what would Kelly do in this sense, you know? Like, we're having a problem right now with something. Do you go back to something and start at square one?
I get called all the time on, you know, working through and applying this structure, who's responsible for it, how you take those different ideas about somebody has a disagreement. There's a process to go through that to get to where it needs to be. So I do get called off and on, just helping them work through that.
Yeah, well, so would you just say, go back to number one, you know, start documenting?
We
or
go
like-
up as far as they need to
Okay.
until they get agreement.
Okay.
Those
What
problems.
do you see with it here then? What do you see, what needs to take
I don't know yet.
place? Okay, you don't know?
I don't know
You
yet.
don't see it?
If we go through this, by the end, I bet you I'll know.
Oh, okay, so you feel that these steps we need to take first, and then
Correct.
we can see what's
Correct.
going on.
It-
And I think that this is huge for what we need.